It is charcuterie o'clock. I'm Christen Brewer. Thanks for the introduction. I am in marketing for Chelsea Groton Bank, and among many things between art and food, I love all of it. I love collaborating with people. I love cooking with people. I love cooking for people. And this is a great lesson that we're going to go through today. And it's going to be basically making a charcuterie board. Besides being among the most difficult words to pronounce, it's actually way cooler than it sounds. So traditionally, a charcuterie board, back in the days of old, would have been a board similar to this, and it would have been comprised of mostly meat. Charcuterie boards would be probably 3/4 meat with maybe a handful of other little things on the board, but the main goal of it was meat. As it's kind of gained in popularity in the recent years, it's become more of a fancy way to say a meat and cheese sort of like grazing board. And even more recently, it's kind of evolved to have other little things on it. So I'm going to be making a charcuterie board that's more reminiscent of what we're talking about now, like how it's used now. And so we'll have some fruits, we'll have some fresh veggie, we will have some cheeses, and we're definitely gonna have meat on here. So the essence of a charcuterie board, and something that can't be understated, is what are you gonna put all of these fresh ingredients on? Like, how do you wanna display this? How large is your party? How many people are you going to feed, and what is the overall table size that you're looking for? That sounds silly to ask those questions, but it matters because you don't want a board to be very small on a really large table. It'll just look a little funny. You want to have a board maybe that has a nice little bit of depth to it. This guy here is about like a 2-inch depth on a board, so when it sits on a table, it sits a little bit higher than like your traditional cutting board would, so it's up on the table a little bit. I like to use this guy because I'm a family of 2, although I'm sure we could be called, we eat for 4, but I usually like to do this size for a family of 2 or 4 people maybe. If I have a lot more, like a 6 or an 8, I might just have a board that kind of bumps out just a little bit longer. I've seen really cool things where people use live edge wood and they just lay it all on there and it looks very foresty. I've seen people use boards like what I'm using, which is a lot of different woods glued and varnished together, so it makes for a really interesting pattern. Now, you're not gonna see this amazing pattern once you've created it, but throughout the night, as people are grazing and coming through and eating off of it, the board will eventually reveal itself. So it's kind of important that you don't have a board that you're embarrassed of, something that might have, be stained over the years that you've been chopping on it like crazy, because eventually, especially if you put together a really good board, you're going to end up seeing this hopefully completely empty, and everyone that you have just served this for will be super, super, super happy and filled with delight. So the way that I like to start my boards, it's really, honestly, it's like creative, really. There's no rules. There's no put the meat down first, put the cheese next, and put the other accoutrement down. There's no real rules. Maybe someone would say there is, but in this class, there's no rules. We don't have any rules. So I'm going to just sort of start building it organically. What kinds of things are you going to be thinking about when you build it organically? Just looking for nice balance. You want to make sure you've got good flavors together. And I'm going to explain all of these things when I start building the board. What am I thinking about when I put my ingredients on? What am I hoping to spread out on the board so that there's not just a heavy board, heavy ingredients over here and maybe all light ingredients over here. I want to kind of think of it in a 360 kind of frame of mind, because people will be coming around and snacking on the board from all angles. So because I have a few ingredients that could roll off of my board, I do use some little glass containers. mostly it's really just easier for me. I find that they don't take away from the display of the board at all. There's so many different levels of the ingredients that I feel like it's completely fine. So what I'm gonna do is, I know that I've got a few ingredients that are just gonna roll off, and I don't wanna lose my tomatoes and olives before I even get to serve it. So I'm just gonna pop these guys on the board for the ones that I'm gonna start laying out. So I know I have a few ingredients. The reason why I want to put the containers on my board first is mostly because I don't want to start laying things out and then realize I forgot a container and then I have to sort of move ingredients around to try to fit it in. I try to be mindful to get everything in there. You know, so these two smaller bowls, I'm going to be using for a little bit of honey and a little bit of mustard. Now that probably sounds like, what the heck is that doing on the board? But you'll see when we build it why it's there and what its function is. So I think I'm just gonna dive right in. I think we're ready. I'm starving looking at all of this, I'll tell you that. So I'm gonna lay down the ingredients that I think are gonna be the hardest to put in after I've started with the meats and cheeses. So what I'm thinking about is my little bunches of grapes. You know, I want to get them kind of sitting up and leaning on my glass bowls. So I'm going to take one bunch of grapes and I'm just going to put it right there. I'm going to take my second bunch of grapes, and I'm putting 2 bunches of grapes on because I am a grape fanatic and there's never enough grapes, especially on a nice meat and cheese board. And so I'm just gonna rest them up against this plate here. And we're just gonna slowly build this guy. So you'll see the ingredients will all start layering in. So from here, I'm thinking we have this nice, beautiful green. Let's go in with a little bit of contrast. So the next thing I'm gonna take is, I have a pepperoni log, a very nice flaming red pepperoni log, which is really super cool. And so I'm gonna cut into this guy and I'm gonna pick some spots where I'm gonna lay him out. I'm not so much worried about putting anything into my bowls yet because they're already standard there. We don't need to fill them yet. We can get into the fun stuff. So I'm gonna start with my pepperoni. I'm gonna liberate it from its container. And then I'm actually gonna cut this guy. I'm probably just gonna cut a nice little 3-inch chunk. Something to keep in mind when you're doing this is know how many people you want to feed prior to ever building the board. And the reason why is because you might end up chopping cheese mindlessly and you'll end up with this huge pile of cheese and then you're like, oh gosh, I guess I'll have to put some of that in the fridge or redo your board later. So for me tonight, I'm going to make a smaller board just for the 2 of us for dinner tonight. And so I'm not going to be piling lots of ingredients on. There will absolutely be leftovers on this board for sure, but I'm not going to take too many, you know, cut up a good 6-inch log. I'm just going to start cutting little tinier pieces, you know, 2 inches, maybe 3-inch logs of some of the meats that we've chosen. So this guy is a nice little pepperoni. He's mild in flavor. He has a tiny bit of a chili bite to it, which is really cool. And that's going to come into play in a little while. So it's important to know what your flavors are that you're using. So I'm going to continue to liberate this guy and we're going to start chopping him up. All right. So I'm thinking every time I make a cut or a chop or a slice, what I'm thinking about is the snackability of it. I don't want to make such a big chunk that your guests are chewing for hours while they're trying to hunk through a big piece of cheese or a big bite. So I always have to remind myself, because I tend to want to make bigger cuts because I'm just sort of mindlessly doing it. I always have to remind myself that the point of this is to make a beautiful grazing board that people can pick the ingredients that they want and eat them. And some of the ingredients will actually be eaten together because you can make up your own rules. So with that in mind, I'm always chopping my ingredients small enough where it's never going to be a big bite that I have to worry about anyone choking on, or it's just such a big bite that they're slogging through it. So I'm going to just chop some nice little slices. And I'm just gonna make some nice little rounds. Because this little pepperoni guy isn't very big, I'm gonna actually keep him in a full slice. So I'm just doing a nice little, you know, a little less than 1/4 of an inch. And I'm gonna keep them in this size because this is completely doable. And I'm just gonna continue to cut through. And no judgment on my knife skills. I'm certainly by no means a professional chef. So if I come out of this with all of these fingers, we've done a good job. All right, so now I have my something red. And I wanna start off with this because this is one of my brighter colored ingredients. So I definitely wanna have him in a way that you can see him nice and easy. So I'm just gonna put these guys in a nice little arrangement. And I'm just gonna kind of lay it out and sort of fan out the pieces. I wanna make it so that people can grab them. So I fan out a little bit so that it's easier to grab a piece versus having them kind of stick together. Now I know it's gonna be difficult for you to see the board full on, and so I'm gonna be very obvious on pointing. And at the end, I'm actually gonna lift the board up a little bit and put it horizontally so that you can see how all of the ingredients really play out on the board. But keep in mind, this is art and food. So you're just gonna create this in a really beautiful way, follow your heart. Nothing on here should be stressful. It's all just fun. It's a fun way to display your food. All right, so I'm gonna move on to some of my favorite ingredients, and it's mostly because I wanna make sure that they're really front and center. So I happen to be a very super big brie fan. Now you're probably wondering, why the heck am I cutting open a little package to take a brie out? Usually brie is in a nice big wheel and there's never enough of it on the board. However, I found some very interesting little baby mini bries. And if you know me, you know that I absolutely cannot resist in any way, shape, or form things that are in miniature, especially when it comes to awesome food like this. So this little tiny guy is actually a brie cheese, and he has his rind on all around. Now, I know it sounds weird, but I happen to be a big rind fan on the brie cheese. I know, not everybody is. But because this is my favorite part of it, I'm gonna put 3 of these little guys on here. And I'm gonna put 3 of them on here because I guess I have to share with my husband. So 2 for me, 1 for him. And so these little adorable little guys, I'm just actually gonna chop through them. I'm gonna put 2 of these little guys, I'm gonna cut them into 4s. And it's a really nice, easy little cut. The knife goes through it nice and easy. And you just kind of wanna wiggle your knife so that the actual cheese, which is, you know, sticky, doesn't just stick to the knife and you smash it a little bit. So you wanna kind of keep your little, tiny little, you know, triangles. They look like little Trivial Pursuit pieces. So I'm gonna finish cutting up the first one into quarters. The second guy, I'm gonna cut him into quarters. Nice and easy. I know you guys can't smell, but I gotta tell you, it smells good. It smells good. Between that pepperoni we just chopped up and the brie, it's like, it's a creamy awesomeness. This one guy, I kept him whole, and I kept him whole on purpose because I'm going to make a little pile with him, and I'm gonna let him kind of be a little bit of my little showstopper. Now I'm gonna take these little dudes that I cut up, and I'm just gonna kind of arrange them. Some of them are gonna lay flat, some of them are gonna be up. There's no rhyme or reason. I'm not following a structure, I'm just following my heart. And so I'm gonna kind of put these little guys around here in a nice little semicircle. Maybe it looks like a nice little star. I'm gonna kind of put a little layer up top here, another little layer there. And I still have 2 more, so I'm just gonna pop this guy right here. Now, because I'm making a smaller board, I am trying to be mindful of leaving a tiny bit of this board space around it. I'm doing that on purpose for 2 reasons. I've definitely dropped a board before and had my ingredients go flying. I find that if you keep a tiny little edge on there and not go right over to the edge, you have a little bit more safety with your ingredients. Trust me, there's nothing worse than spending all of this time working on a beautiful board only to flip it or have your ingredients roll off of it. It's okay if you do, it's maddening. But if you have a dog, they'll be a happy little dog eating that. All right, so we made our little brie. We've got a nice little pile of that. I'm gonna add an apple onto my board, but I'm not gonna do that until the end because apples tend to rust. So I'm gonna keep in mind that I want this little space here for my apple slices. So I'm just making a mental note to self. Sometimes I'll even put the apple right where I want it so that I can remember, oh, that's my space for my apple. But in this case, I'm gonna keep it right there. It's gonna look at me and it's gonna let me know that it needs to go on the board. Next up, I am gonna get into the bigger pieces of meats that we have. And so that's gonna be meats like your prosciutto. I picked this up at a local butcher that we have. It's a fantastic place that makes a lot of these cured meats. And I haven't advanced my game enough yet to be able to make my own cured meats, but you just stay tuned for that one coming someday. I'm sure I'll be getting into it in the coming years. So for this, I've got a nice healthy portion of this. We're definitely not gonna use all of it, but it comes in big slices. So what I'm thinking about is I want to use up the big pieces. I want to use the bigger pieces while I have a lot of room on here because I don't want to be using all my little ingredients and then wish I had more room to fit some of my bigger ingredients. So I'm just going to dive right on into this bag. I'm going to throw my scraps off to the side. Usually prosciutto is, they separate it with a little bit of plastic or a, little slices on here. This is so paper thin, so they put these little plastic dividers in between so that you're not screaming trying to figure out how the heck you're gonna separate out your slices. It is a little bit on the greasier side, so pro tip, I always have a wet face cloth or a dishcloth, and I always use it to try to get some of the oils off of my hands, mostly so that my ingredients don't slip out of my own hands. And definitely, I never want slippery fingers when I'm using a knife. So pro tip, always have a wet rag or dishcloth to get your fingers to be degreased. All right, so this is way more than I could ever eat. Actually, no, it's way more than I should eat. So I'm gonna just take a couple of these slices and we're gonna start peeling back one of these guys. You might notice that they might rip a little bit, it's fine. So this little guy ripped in half. I'm gonna take the bit of the string and just kind of put it off to the side. Yes, this is art, and yes, you don't want to be wasteful, but for some little things, sometimes I'll cut and clean to make a prettier presentation. So in this case, I have a nice little strip of prosciutto. It's a half strip from what I have. It will range in sizes depending on where you get it, how they package it, whatever. So for me, I'm going to take this little guy, and I'm actually just going to make a nice little roll up. And so I have a nice little roll up, 2 inches or so. I'm actually going to cut this guy into a smaller chunk. And I'm doing that on purpose because I'm always trying to be mindful. I don't want anyone to have a huge, big mouthful of one ingredient and then they're kind of stuck with it for a little while. So I'm actually going to chop this little dude in half. And it's kind of nice because now you get 2. I'm actually going to take these 2 pieces that I've just done. I'm going to take the cut side and I'm going to put that down. The reason I'm going to put the cut side down is because the rougher side is actually more pretty. It almost looks like a little rosebud or a little flower, maybe a little tulip, whatever. I'm going to just put the cut side down so that it looks a little more organic. And I'm going to choose to put this right here. And so I'm going to take another piece. And this has a nice little 1 inch, so I'm just going to use this guy just as he is. I'm not even going to cut him in half. It's kind of fun too because like every board you do will be different from a board you did prior. I think it's really difficult sometimes to create a board the same way every time. I mean, I guess if you took photographs, you know, you popped it up on Instagram maybe, but I kind of like the idea that they're never really the same. I think that's kind of fun. So I have another little half slice. My prosciutto is pulling off in half slices, so I'm just gonna roll with it, literally roll with it. Made another roll, cutting this dude in half. 2 more beautiful tulips for my board. Now, one of these I'm actually gonna lay down, and the other one I'm gonna lay down on its side. I'm gonna remove this guy so you can see it. So what I'm doing is I'm sort of building up a nice little pile of flowers. I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but so I have these 3 that are up and these 2 that are laying down. I'm gonna do 1 more to kind of, maybe 1 or 2 more to round it out. Keep in mind, your ingredients that you're using to do this, these ingredients are based on what you like. Or what your crowd likes, whoever you're entertaining for. You know, if you know someone has an allergy, knock it off your board, don't even bother. If you, for some reason, if you just are absolutely not into prosciutto or salami, or you have a family who has a, you know, an aversion to something, these are all just really customizable, which is just really great. You know, you can do honestly whatever you'd like. In this household, we pretty much eat everything. So I've made it a point to have some fun, different little ingredients. And I'm gonna do 1 more. I can already see myself snacking on this in 40 minutes or so. I'll let the camera off for that one though. No one needs to see that. I'm gonna wipe my fingers before using my knife again because I definitely do not want slippery fingers. These 2 I'm going to put on top of the other 2 that I just did, and I'm just going to sort of put them so that they're all laying in different directions. Again, I know it's a little difficult to see, but I think you can get the gist of what we're doing here. So I'm now going to take this ingredient and I'm going to actually pop it off to the side, and we have so many things that we're going to add on to this board that I don't really want to confuse myself on what I've added already and what I haven't. So I'm going to kick that guy off. I am going to start adding an ingredient here, and so I have a beautiful prosciutto, and that flavor is kind of mild, a little bit salty, a sort of a deeper fat flavor. It's a really nice, mild, delicious. I would say you focus more on your texture versus the flavor of it. The pepperoni we know is mild, but it's a strong sucker. He's got a little bit of punch. And then our grapes are a nice little sweet. So to balance this out, I'm gonna add an ingredient that I made prior to this. Some of you may have even made it into that class where we had talked about pickling and all of the different things that you can pickle. And so one of the things that I absolutely love, not even just because it's super tasty, but because it's a really beautiful flavor and it balances really well. And what is it? It's beets. I love pickled beets so much. So I've already pickled these. You know, they've been in my fridge in their pickle brine for about 2 weeks. And I'm just gonna actually pile them in here. I'm putting them in now because I feel like I don't like them like super, super, super freezing when they're straight out of the fridge. I don't know, maybe my teeth are just totally wimps, but I kind of like them when they're a little more, less than fridge cold. So again, you're building the board to what you like. So for me, because I love pickled beets, I'm loading it up because no matter how full that thing is, I know it's never gonna be enough. But I don't wanna overbalance my board. So I'm gonna chuck in a healthy amount, let's say. Awesome. And so there is my beautiful beets. So now I've got a light green, a flaming pink, a nice pinkish tan prosciutto with a bright pop of red. Awesome. So what do I want now? I'm actually gonna chop up my apple. And I'm gonna chop him up now because I wanna show you my trick for how I'm gonna keep this beautiful apple from turning on me. And some of you may already know this trick and have done this forever. So I'm just kind of being a little bit mindful of where my core is. I whack into a lot of different apples all the time, so I just sort of go into it. If you have an apple core, go for it, for sure. Whatever makes it easier. I just sort of am rough, so I kind of hack into it. I like the beauty of, I like the boards looking a little rustic, not quite so, you know, perfect. I kind of like it a little rough around the edges. I feel like you're serving food on a board. It should be fun, right? So I am going to cut these into slices, thin slices. Again, trying to keep in mind that I don't want big chunks. I don't want to have it be a huge mouthful of apple and then you're sort of working on that for a little while. I want you to be able to put other things with it. And apple is one of my most favorite fruits to put together with a meat platter, because I feel like it just complements, you know. You've heard of people who like to put, you know, cheddar cheese in their apple pies. You know, like there's just really nothing an apple can't do, truthfully, in my mind. In my house, we're big apple people. All right, and so because we're kind of a big apple people, and you know, we want to cut some of that heaviness that we already have with the cheeses and with the meats, I'm going to kind of do a little bit more apple. If you're not an apple person, a pear, really, whatever you're into, it's pretty easy. I'm sort of fanning out my slices right now, and I'm fanning them out because I'm going to do something to them to make it so that they don't turn rusty. And for those who might not be, you know, maybe not hacking into apples and putting them on a board, or you've never made an apple pie, apples do what potatoes do, and they get rusty. And by that I mean they turn a little bit brown on the exposed skin. I don't feel like it tastes really all that, you know, I don't find that it alters the flavor. Maybe if you did it overnight and you tried one, maybe you'd notice that oxidization is like a little, maybe it has a different flavor, but it's not really bad. I think it's really cosmetic, ultimately. So what I just did here is I cut into a lime, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just drip a little bit of lime juice or lemon, use whatever you like. I'm actually going to drip a little bit of the lime on here, but I'm not going to squeeze it and juice it out. I'm just going to do a couple of little drips. The lime will stop the apple from rusting, and so it'll stay looking fresh on the board. Hopefully that'll work for me today. What I normally do when I do a big board is I'll actually make a mixture in a spray bottle, and I'll spray it down so that I can be very confident that I've covered my apples. The reason why I water it down is I don't want you to bite into the apple and taste the lime. So it's just a little bit of it, and it really goes kind of unnoticed. So, or at least in my experience, it's been not noticed. So I'm just kind of massaging in a little bit of that lime. You know, because this is a board that I'm going to use for dinner tonight, I'm not going to agonize in any way about the oxidization or the rusting of it. I'm just going to move right on. So I'm going to take these now and I'm going to start displaying them. And I'm just going to kind of put them together. I'm going to kind of follow my pepperoni idea here, and I'm going to make it so that people can get in there and pull the pieces apart. And by people, I mean me. This is my dinner. So I'm just going to kind of layer things on. So I'm going to be mindful of butting right up against the prosciutto that we have here and the pepperoni. And I'm doing that so that the board is nice and packed, that it looks like there's just so many beautiful ingredients for days. And so I'm just kind of fanning them in. Again, following my heart on the way that I'm going to lay it out. I'm not super particular about how I want it to look. I just want it to look like a nice, organized little pile, a little artistic. I'm going to pop my apple off to the side, do a little finger scrubbage. So one thing that we're going to do pick up my little bowl right there. One thing we're gonna do is we're going to chop into something for another color dimension. I'm gonna go with a nice classic little piece of cheddar. I cut this guy into about like a 1-inch square. I did it so that the size would be where I want it. We usually start with really big blocks of cheese because we do this so often. So we have the nice big blocks. This guy is just a regular mild cheddar. The rest of the cheddars that we have is, I have a chili smoked cheddar. So this guy is gonna be smoky, a little spicy. And then I have a spring onion and chive. So this guy is gonna be a tiny bit of sharpness. I'm pointing to my cat who's looking at me like, I'm gonna jump on that laptop. And so this guy is a nice spring onion and chive. So he's gonna add a nice little onion component to it. So I have 3 beautiful cheddars. I like to do the 3 different flavors. You could do it in a different way by doing a sharp, a mild, an extra sharp. So it's really about whatever your taste buds want. For me, I want a little bit of a different couple of flavors. You know, I really enjoy a nice spicy bite with an apple, or a nice mild bite with a spring onion with my pepperoni. So real quick, I'm gonna chop up a couple of these guys. You're noticing I don't use a cheese cutter. I guess I could. I don't know. I just always kind of cut things on my own. So again, it goes down to, I really like the way things look with a little bit more of an organic feel versus a fully perfect cut up thing. That's just my aesthetic. I think it's kind of fun when you see the art of it. So I'm gonna actually cut this thing up about 3/4. I'm gonna leave this little block here this way. And I'm doing this because I'm actually gonna use my little cheddar block as a design element. So I'm just kind of popping them down. Now I'm gonna put the cheddar here. Now you'll notice I put it next to the apple, and that's because I am one of those people that does enjoy the way that apple and cheddar goes together in a nice little bite. I think it's, it's different, it's weird, it hits your tongue in a nice way. So, and again, I'm just making a nice little pile. And I am putting a little bit of my cheddar on top of my apple. It's just a little bit of a design, not easy peasy. All right, we're gonna cut into our next meat. Actually, I'm not even gonna try to peel that plastic back because I already know, because I have a million people watching me, it's gonna go badly. So I'm just gonna cut the top off. These guys, this is my capicola, and they're in nice little perfect circles. I do like to buy them pre-sliced because I think it's a little easier to deal with. So again, we're gonna do a nice little roll. These I'm gonna leave just in this way, nice little roll up. These I'm gonna put right here, and I'm gonna do a little fan. You're probably wondering, why would I be saving this little hole here? And I'm saving that little hole because I'm gonna put some loose ingredients that I don't want to roll over off the board. So I'm gonna continue to roll up some of the capicola. You know, if you like one of these meats more than another, maybe you change up your proportions. Maybe you do a little bit more capicola. Maybe you do a little more, prosciutto. We've got some soupy we're gonna add into it. It's gonna be fun. So what I'm doing here is making a nice little fan so that it creates a nice little design element on the board. And I think that'll do it for me. Nice little selection here. All right, I lied. I'm gonna do one more. And I'm doing one more because there looks like a nice little hole that we can fill. So here we have a nice little fan. So we have our pile of brie, and then we have a little fan around it of the capicola, it looks delicious. Off to the side with that. Here, I have some soupy. Anyone who's a local New Englander knows that that's pretty much the cream of the crop. It just literally doesn't get better than that. I guess you could try to convince me that there's something better, but I won't listen. I can't hear it. It's too good, and I always have it on my boards. There's like 5 different varying flavor levels that you can have, flavor profiles. This one I went with just a nice little mild, and so it's going to have a tiny bit of spice to it. This is a hard salon, a hard cured meat, so you're going to want to make sure you got your elbow room. Try to find the way that the link lays flat, because it'll make your cutting a lot easier. And for this, I'm going to follow the same principle that I've been following all along. Nice, easy bites of perfect little slices of meat. This is a very salty ingredient. So we're going to chop up a bunch of this. Now, I know my husband is a very big fan of this, so I'm going to be a little bit heavier handed with this than I would maybe the Genoa that we'll do next. And so I'm just making nice little bites, perfect little bites. Put this guy off to the side. And I'm going to display this right here. I'm going to remove my cup here so you can see this. And for this, I'm going to make, again, the slices a little bit fanned out so that you can see them. Get them in there in a nice little line. Again, I'm leaving a little bit of room on the board here. And I'm just going to lay a couple more in to make it do a nice little fan, a little loop-de-loop. I mean, you could do these in lines if you wanted or not. Really, it's just about laying out your ingredients in a really fun way, you know. Have fun with it. Move things around if you feel like, you know, maybe you could be doing, maybe you want it to do something different. So I made a little U with that, like a nice little U. So with that, I'm going to pop my little jar back in. We're going to put him right here. I'm going to move my the soupy that we just put on there so that I can get that little thing, the little cut back in. And so what I'm going to put here is going to be these olives. These are black olives. I had a hard time, obviously, you know, finding fresh ingredients is all about what is fresh and when it's fresh. So I just went with some black olives, but I encourage you to get some nice Mediterranean olives, some beautiful marinated olives. Whatever your taste bud is, that's what you're going to put in there. And I'm just going to drop them right in there. So this space that we have right here, what is that? That space is going to be for my tomatoes. And I like to put my tomatoes with a little, I like to toss them with a little bit of olive oil cut in half. I like to toss them with a little olive oil. I like to put a little bit of chive in there. And I like to leave them just that way on the board. I just, something about the way a nice salted tomato is, a little bit of really beautiful olive oil. I'm going to have these because they are all, you know, different shapes. I got the tomatoes that are varying colors, and I chose them because I just think that they're really beautiful on a board. You know, you got lots of yellows and reds and greens and all these beautiful veggies. So I'm just trying to think of really beautiful things that I can complement, things that look really beautiful. Plus, orange is one of my favorite colors, and so naturally, I think it tastes better than any other colored tomato because it's not only the prettiest, but the tastiest. So I put these in a little bowl, and I do this because we're going to be tossing them with a little bit of olive oil. So you're just going to probably put like maybe a half teaspoon in, and it's just a tiny bit. And we're really doing that so that our salt will stick to it. I'm using a kosher salt, nice and easy. I'm just going to put in literally a pinch, the pinch of salt that you see in all of the cooking shows, right? Whatever that pinch is to you, whatever your taste buds are. You know, if you're a salty person, you know, give it a good hearty pinch. I'm adding some chives. I dried these in my dehydrator from my summer garden. I just really like the way it adds a nice oniony component. So this, you can see, a beautiful little bowl. I'm just going to give them a little froofing, a little zhuzhing, massaging, whatever you want to call it. All right. I can see the salt is all on there. I can see that my chives are nice. And I'm going to pour them into this little hole. There's a little hole here. I'm just going to drop them in. And now there's a little hole here that I created, and I'm going to continue them that way. So now I've got these beautiful tomatoes. I mix them in together kind of last minute because I kind of want those flavors not to be fully married, but to be a little separate. You know, I really like this idea. Next, I'm going to put on my blue cheese, and I'm putting on my blue cheese because it is one of my favorites. So I want to make sure I have a nice, good space for it. This is a very well packaged little dude, so get in there. With this blue cheese, we're going to be following the same principle that we followed with that really beautiful block of orange mild cheddar. And so for this guy, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the tip right here so that I have a really adorable tiny little mini wedge. And this wedge is going to be my design element. And I'm going to nestle him right in there. Pretty little white spot on there. The rest of it I'm going to cut into probably like a little more than half of an inch, maybe half an inch, a block. Put that off to the side. I'm going to cut up another big guy. I'm going to put this off to the side because I don't know how much I'm going to need. I'm going to use my knife now, and I'm just going to loosely chunk. Blue cheese is really strong cheese. Not everybody's into it. If you're not into it, you still need that little pop of white element, use feta. Use tiny little mozzarella pearls. Whatever you're into. It's not. There's no rules. It's what makes this whole project so fun. All right, so I've made some nice little chunks. Again, I'm being mindful because this is a really strong cheese. I'm being mindful of not making really big chunks that'll be hard, you know, like an overpowering flavor. It's a delicious cheese because it is a strong cheese. So with this, I'm just gonna lay this on the back side of where I put the soupy. And you'll notice now that the soupy matches, you know, pops a little more. Hard again for you to see on Zoom. But if we were in person, you'd be like starting to salivate right about now, which is definitely what I'm doing. Again, your towel is going to come wicked in handy because that blue cheese is a crumbly cheese and it gets everywhere. It's unavoidable. I'm going to wipe off my knife and I'm going to wipe off my board so I can have a little bit of a cleaner area again to kind of work in. I'm going to take my little chunk that's left over and I'm going to put it off to the side because I think that's just an absolutely perfect amount. Now I'm going to put on some of my little accoutrement, which is I have a little bit of mustard. And this mustard is beautiful because it just complements all of these different little meats that we have on here. So sometimes you take a little meat, put a little dollop of mustard on here. This mustard we actually make ourselves. It's a really beautiful fermented mustard made with a nice Sauvignon Blanc. So it's got some bite to it. It'll definitely, you know, fight you a little bit, which is kind of what I like about mustard. If you're not a mustard person, just don't put it on there. You don't need to. But I like it, and you can tell we like it a lot. One of the other things that you can do, if you're not a mustard person, you can put honey in its place. There's a huge community out there who argues that honey doesn't belong on a charcuterie board, but like we started this saying there's no rules. So if you want honey on that board, you put that honey on that board. That's fine. Another little element I'm going to add in now my smoked cheese. And this is a stronger cheese. I know this because I've had it already. It's a smoked cheddar chili. It's going to be spicy. It's going to be smoky. It's a beautiful marbling. I just really enjoy this. I'm going to cut a couple of slices off. Probably do 3 of them. I'm going to leave a chunk and I'm going to put it into its little placeholder right there. I'm going to take these remaining guys and I'm going to chunk them into little 3s. So that each slice I just did will give me 3 different little slices at about like a, you know, little inch or so. And again, we're gonna just follow our hearts and the placement, and we're gonna just kind of pop it in. I'm gonna stick it right here a little bit behind that cheese, behind the grapes. And I'm gonna kind of go a little bit up to the edge of the board, but not fully. So that takes care of that guy. We are going to take out our little chives. Now it looks like we're getting full, right? And so this is kind of like the fun part. So now you're like, ooh, all right. You know, what you have left should be ingredients that you don't need, like that you're not wanting lots and lots of. So, you know, because this is our dinner, you know, I've made choices that I know fits our palate. So I'll have a little bit less of something else. And in this case, I'm taking the spring onion cheddar cheese, which is a really strong guy, so I don't want too much. And I'm gonna cut them into a nice little chunk like this, and then I'm gonna make little tiny chunks. Again, I'm not using a cheese cutter because I really enjoy that rustic feel. I just really like the way it looks. You know, it looks like you really worked hard on it, which sounds weird, right? So how could something rustic, you know, look like you worked harder on it? I don't know why. It's just, it's the impression I get. So I got a couple of these little guys. And I'm gonna sneak them right here behind the grapes because I have a nice little space for them. I'm purposefully keeping this this dish here without anything in it because I don't want to create a space that you can't see through, so you can kind of see behind this space a little bit. So I want to leave it so that you can see. Put my cheese off to the side. Now I'm going to get into my Genoa. Again, we love this one, but if you list them all out of your favorites, you know, it is a favorite, but it's our least favorite. So I just saved just a little bit of it to put on the board because it's delicious and it's fun. And these guys are in smaller circles. And the other reason why I saved these to the end is because they're in smaller circles and I have limited space available. So it kind of like all works out, you know. These I'm going to give a nice little fold. You'll notice that this is harder to keep folded. So I try to roll them up and then I'm going to just kind of place them. Some of them might unfurl a little bit and you just kind of have to tuck them in a little bit. You know, it's got so much nice, beautiful oils. This guy is a little bit, he's got a big cracked pepper chunks in it. That's just something that we really enjoy. We just really love that, you know, bite. Again, I'm nestling this beautiful guy in here. And actually maybe you can't see, but that one I just put down unfolded. So I'm gonna fold this guy back up, put this one down, put the fold on the bottom this time because I foolishly put the fold on the top. And I'm gonna pop him right there again. Gonna do my last one right here. Nice. Wipe off my hands because they are absolutely a little bit oil. Now I have my last cheese that I want to add, which is a really beautiful gouda. It's kind of creamy. It's just, if you like gouda, this is it's a good complement to have on the board. All of these cheeses and the different flavors they have all have complements. So just try them all in different ways. You might surprise yourself what kind of a combination of flavor that you're really into. Again, I'm going to leave my block a little bit big. So I'm just going to cut a couple pieces off of this, following that very same principle that we just did with the smoked. And I'm going to leave my little block here. And I'm going to just use him because I'm going to have him kind of stand up here on the back. And I'm going to cut the Gouda actually in half because it's not nearly as powerful as the smoked chili one was. You don't want a big bite on that. And so I'm just going to kind of rein in a little bit on the blue cheese that we did. I'm putting this cheddar, this Gouda on the back here for like 2 reasons. And one of them is I know for a fact that I am not always the most graceful person on the planet. And if I make a nice little cheese wall that holds my blue cheese in place when I'm walking to put this on a table, I have a fighting chance of it not falling off on me, which general rules is going to. So I really like to add some either raisins or cranberries. And I know it sounds silly, but it's my favorite flavor. I don't normally see cranberries on a charcuterie board or raisins, but I love them, and I love the way they taste with everything on here. Take a bite of some of these meats with a little bit of a cranberry, and I think you'll find it's quite lovely. So for me, it's one of my favorite ingredients. So I'm using one that has less sugar, so it's just a dried cranberry, but I am purposely choosing less sugar because I'm not really in it for the sweet, I'm in it for that tanginess. And I'm just gonna fill up my little cup here. You know, I kind of go a little halfway. You know, maybe if you guys weren't watching, I'd fill that sucker up a little bit more. But I'll be polite. All right, so at this point, we basically have a beautiful board, or like designed. Now we just need to add a tiny bit of fun. I'm gonna just move my little pile over here. We're just gonna add a couple of little design elements, and I'm gonna turn this on the side. I'm gonna move my little block here so that you can see it. And if I've done my job correctly, everything will stay on the plate. I went to my garden, which thankfully still has fresh herbs. I've got rosemary, I've got some beautiful sage, and I have thyme. I'm gonna use these as a nice little flower arrangement, if you will, to stick in and tuck in to add a little bit of an aromatic to my cheese board, to the charcuterie board. The way that the herbs smell with the cheeses and things, it's just so good. So it just adds like that extra salivation level, you know? So I've already cleaned my sage tops, and so I'm just gonna actually stick them in. And it's gonna add that nice little earthy element. I like to do things in threes. I'm not really an even person, so I like to do things sort of randomized and kind of chaotic. It sort of fits my personality as well. So I like to do things in threes. So I'm just gonna nestle in this sage leaf. It looks like it covers up some of your ingredients. It's okay, like you just snap around it. You know, and if you're making this with little ones around the house, it's sometimes fun to give them a sage leaf and tell them, oh, it's a beautiful piece of lettuce, and they bite into it, and it's such a powerful sagey, you know, bite. You know, if you're into, you know, torturing your family. So I'm gonna pop this guy, nestle him right on in, easy. Rosemary, unbelievable. That smell is so complimentary. So I have two sprigs. I'm gonna cut them in half. I'm just gonna stick them in, easy. I'm gonna nestle that right in there. I kind of want them to hang off the board a little bit. It's a little fun, adds a nice little zip. Stick this here. Where else do we wanna go? Maybe right there. Again, following my heart. Just whatever looks good. Now I'm gonna add just a little bit of thyme, and we're pretty much wrapping up with that design part of it. I'm gonna stick a little bit of this thyme here. I like it because it adds a nice little wild element to it. I know it's a little bit difficult to see because it's a very big dark spot on the Zoom, but hopefully you'll get the gist. And if you could smell what I'm smelling, you know, just like there's wonderful bits of, you know, I'm smelling a little bit of the beets and a little bit of that, just that earthy pickled smell. I'm smelling the thyme. I smell a little bit of the sweetness from the apple that we cut up. Oh man, the meats are giving off this like just really beautiful oiled kind of just earthy smell. It's impossible for you to get what this is unless you've done this with me right now. So in my mind, this would be a sort of complete board that I would put on the table. Next to it, I would either have a little thing of crackers for people who find that, you know, who like a little bit of cheese with their crackers, or little crackers with their cheese. I happen to be a celiac, so I don't tend to put lots of crackers on my boards, mostly because then I can't snack on them. And yes, I'm that selfish that I need to be able to eat my own creations. But there's a lot of really good gluten-free crackers you can use. So I would probably put a board right here with some, a little bowl here with some crackers. And I would maybe put a little thing of tiny little plates with a bunch of little napkins. And then I would add, I use a mason jar because I'm a very simple, I like simple, rustic looking things, you know, not overly designed, which is ironic when you're a designer for a living. I love these tiny little baby forks, and I love these fun little multicolored double prong little sticks. I like to put these next to it for those who can just pick and choose little bits of what they want and people's fingers aren't all in them. And in the time that we're in now, that's probably especially important. You could use little cheese knives, you can, whatever it is that will help people pick through it. But that is essentially it. This is a very beautiful, fun, delicious board. It really just didn't get better than that.